afternoon. Go ahead and have a seat. On the record. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon. My name is Judge Patricia Quigley. And we're here this afternoon on the matter of Christine Archer versus Robert Parisi, Jr., case number 649-2021, DV 64. Could I have the persons attending the hearing please state their names for the record, as well as their relationship to this matter, beginning with the plaintiff. Who's the plaintiff? Please stand up, state your name.
My name is Christine Archer.
Okay.
All
right, you're the plaintiff. That's good.
My name is Debbie, and I'm an advocate for MCVP. EP, the Crisis and Dementia Center downstairs.
What's the M stand for, the C, the B, and the D?
The Monarch Center for Violence and Crime Prevention.
Okay, thank you. And you understand you don't represent the plaintiff?
Yes.
All right, so you're in no way to assist her with any kind of testimony or interfere in any way. All right. And do we have a defendant?
Defendant Robert Parisi, Jr.
Okay. And are you counsel for the defendant?
Yes, Attorney Ted Parent, Theodore H. Parent actually. And also accompanying us is Sophia Cunha Vasconcelos. She is a recently graduated law school. So from law school, she is an intern in my office now until she passes the bar.
All right. You haven't entered an appearance, correct? And you will need to spell your first and last names.
S-O-F as in Frank, I-A. And my last name is C-U-N.
I'm sorry. First letter?
C as in cat.
Okay.
U-N-H-A. And there's a hyphen. V as in Victor. A-S as in Sam. C-O-N.
T?
C as in cat.
O-N, yes.
C-E-L-O.
C-E? Okay.
L-O-S.
Okay. And what you need to understand is that you have a mask on, very difficult to hear you, also very difficult to record. So please speak up if you are ever going to speak. All right? I expect also that you not interrupt or interfere at all. Okay? And that goes likewise for the persons in the audience. Okay?
Your Honor, I have a preliminary request.
Yes.
I do not know who this gentleman is. If he's a witness, I'd ask that witnesses be sequestered. That would go for our witness as well.
Okay. And do you know who this, well, who are you, sir? Please state your name.
Eric Lazaro. I'm a friend of Christine's.
All right. And Ms. Archer, are you intending to call this person as a witness?
I was intending to call this person as a witness.
Okay. All right. And you likewise were intending to call this person as a witness in your name, sir?
Thomas Parisi. I'm the brother of the defendant.
Okay. All right. Each of you needs to go out into the lobby until such time as you have to be called. Okay? All right. So in this matter, okay, sit.
I'm getting there. I was just
Okay, thank you. The other party is unrepresented. You have two attorneys here. I have no intention of having you dominate this proceeding. You understand?
I'm sorry. I was trying to sit down. I have a bad knee. It takes me a second sometimes. I was not doing it intentionally, Your Honor.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yes.
You know the dynamics in the courtroom, and it can be difficult, so I'm sorry. I did not realize that. Okay. The plaintiff has the burden of proof in this matter, and that means you go first, you call your witnesses first, prior to the defendant taking his opportunity to speak. This matter is scheduled until 4 o'clock, so we really need to go quickly. You need to prove the allegations in your petition, and you have the burden of showing that domestic violence has occurred So that means you need to be able to show, first of all, you need to testify to the relationship between you and the defendant, as well as at least one incident of domestic violence. And that is as defined in the statute, and it can be a assault, threat, in some cases, destruction of property, or well, threatening, or some other category within the statute. And again, it's got to be as stated in the petition so that the defendant has already had notice of that. Please raise your right hand. Could you swear or affirm that the information you will provide at the hearing today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I swear.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
And start by defining your relationship to the defendant.
Robert and I have been in,
And actually, while you're testifying, if you're more comfortable being seated, that's fine. Do you want the witness?
Your Honor, it's up to the court whether she testifies now, but I will be cross-examining, and it might be easier for her to be there for
All
that.
right. So at this point, we can let you sit there.
okay. Robert and I have been in a romantic relationship for 2 years. During that course of time, the majority of the abuse was emotional in terms of isolating.
Wait, so did you cohabit?
We cohabited.
So where did you live?
Well, we were living at 110 Court Street, and then in February we moved to 25 Adams Road in Westmoreland.
All right. Okay, please continue.
The controlling behavior began with my financial security, enforcing me to quit my previous job to work for him, which doesn't give me an option anytime that I try to leave the relationship, as well as isolating me from any of my family and friends, and repeatedly not letting me seek medical attention when I've requested it.
Okay. Ma'am, what I'd like you to do is you need to testify from your memory. I know you keep looking down, and I'm assuming that's really for comfort. If you need to look at something to refresh your recollection, what are you looking at? Your petition?
No, I'm just looking at a note. This is my timeline of the events that has happened since.
Why don't you start with a situation in which there was something significant happened that you have alleged in the petition?
Well, the most significant thing that happened would be the event that caused me to get into the hospital, essentially, finally.
Okay.
In the petition, I note that beginning on the 9th, I requested to go to the hospital
9th of
because I suffer from anxiety and depressive disorder, which I do have documentation for. Robert has been aware of this disorder since the very first date that we've been on, and he's aware that there are warning signs that indicate I'm in a bad spiral for depression and I need to get medical attention, and he cannot handle it. On the 9th, I made an appointment to go to the doctor. Robert wanted to go to the doctor's appointment with me. I let him drive me to the hospital. When we got upstairs, he wanted to come into the doctor's appointment with me, which I didn't want to because he would speak over the doctor. I went into my treatment. The doctor asked me if I wanted to go into an inpatient rehabilitation program, but I knew that this would make Robert very angry, so I opted for an intensive outpatient program. When I got out of that appointment, I noticed that Robert was quite upset with me, and when we got in the car, he just started berating me for how selfish I was for not allowing him to be in that doctor's appointment, and how I did not care about leaving him in the waiting room while I was doing so. He berated me so much that when I came to a location where I could get out of the car, I got out of the car and left. I felt it was better for me to be away from him and stay sleeping outside that night than to go back to him. I did the best I could, sleeping between two dumpsters. Eventually, I did go into the back of his building that he owns on 310 Marlborough Street because it was so cold. And then when morning came, I walked down to his office to address him because I felt that I wasn't going to make it on my own. I had no job. If I leave him, I have nowhere to live if I leave him. I also was afraid that he would try to take my daughter away from me because in previous instances he has called the father of my daughter to say that I was on drugs and an unfit mother, so to keep me to come back to him. I did not want that to happen. After another argument, I decided to go home with him. When I went home with him, I was extremely depressed, still in the very same depressive state. At that point, Robert watched me not eat or drink for 5 days, left me there. I had no access to my vehicle, and my phone was missing, so I could not call anyone for help. Finally, on the day, which was May 12th, that I was supposed to get my daughter, I knew I was not in a mentally sound state in order to be a good mother. So I went and, actually I skipped a part. The day before that, on the 11th, I was crying, I was sleeping, I wasn't eating, I wasn't drinking. I mentioned that I needed to go to the hospital. He wasn't doing that. I was afraid that he was going to start yelling at me, so I actually started cutting my wrists to demonstrate to him how badly I needed medical attention. He did not acknowledge any of these cuts on my arm or anything, just left me in the room. On the 12th, I came downstairs when I realized I was going to have to get my daughter and I was not fit to be her parent during that time. I demanded that Robert take me to the hospital, at which point Robert started screaming at me that I'm the most selfish person in the world and that all I do is think about myself. I had my wrists out to show him that they were cut. He wouldn't acknowledge it. I opened a drawer. I pulled the knife that I'd been using to cut my wrists and literally, just to show you, took it out of the drawer, had it right on the counter in my hand there, at which point Robert grabbed my hand, cut my right thumb that required 2 stitches, picked me up by my arm and my leg, and threw me on the floor in a different room and left me on the floor bleeding and crying. After some period of time, I noticed that my coworker was there. She said that Robert wanted her to drive me to the hospital, and I demanded an ambulance instead, at which point I was taken to the hospital. I stayed the night there. I got my stitches there. The next morning, they asked me if I wanted to go into the inpatient program. I said, yes, I do want to be in that program. I was taken to the Hampstead Psychiatric Hospital. I do have documentation showing that I was there for my admission date and my discharge date. I also have the diagnosis that I received in case Your Honor needs to see that. I spent 6 days in that hospital, I didn't have my phone, it was still missing, so I was unable to have any phone numbers to communicate with any of my family. And I was unable to go on Facebook to look up people so that I could communicate with someone. The only phone number I had was the father of my daughters, so I called him to let him know I was in the hospital. When when I was discharged from the Hampstead Hospital, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you about the continued stalking that happened after I got out of the hospital. Is that part, or can it only be the things in the protective order that I've already read?
If you testify to something that's outside of what attorney parent deems should be admitted, then he'll object.
Okay. I was discharged from the Hampstead Hospital at 1 p.m. The reason I am mentioning this is because Robert had been sending messages to 17 different people regarding me saying that I had checked myself out of the hospital and was out drinking.
Objection, Your Honor, this is obviously hearsay testimony, it's not something she would know personally.
Are these messages sent to you or to someone else?
Those messages were sent to someone else, but I
And they
did
told you about?
print. Yes, I
This
did
is a
print some of them
family
out.
division. This is a family division case. The rules of evidence do not apply.
Well, the reason I mentioned it is,
I'll give it whatever weight the court deems appropriate. What is it? And then you'll need to move on.
okay. I'll just move on. So, then at 3:20 I arrived in my shelter in Keene. And then at 5:21 I messaged Eric, who is the gentleman I brought as a witness, that I'm at the library. I was using Facebook Messenger to do this and deleting the messages as I sent them as quickly as I could to ask him to come pick me up, since I had no access to a vehicle as well, so that I could get my medication. I was informed by my sister that Robert was aware that I was meeting.
I'm good. Can you testify, please, from your own memory and experience
Okay.
rather than what people have told you? Because
All
you
right.
had the opportunity to bring witnesses.
Okay, by him breaking into my Facebook Messenger, this is the only way that he would have been able to know where I was. I ended up seeing him right outside the
Who's
Rite Aid.
he? The defendant or somebody else? You didn't tell me the name of the
Okay,
person.
Robert broke into my Facebook Messenger to locate me
And how do you know it's him who did that?
because I'm not allowed to say it, but he told my sister that I was meeting Eric at the library, and I saw his vehicle in the shopping center right outside where I was getting my medication. Then at 7 p.m., Eric brought, okay, so that was Rite Aid. He was driving his GRX Lexus at that time. Then at 5:19 and approximately 9 p.m., I set up a new cell phone so that I couldn't be tracked. I didn't realize that there was tracking devices in the phones. I sent an email from this phone to one of my support, anxiety and depression support members that had my new phone number on it. I received a text at 3:09 a.m. on my new phone number from Robert Parisi, indicating that he had broken into my Google account. That was the only way anybody knew that phone number. I did not tell
He
anybody.
broke into your Google account?
I'm saying that he did because I did not tell anybody that number. And I put that number in an email to my support group members so that we could communicate. I received that text message from him at 3:09 a.m. on May 20th on my new phone, as well as 2 emails from him trying to get me to be with him again. In these emails, I need to bring up the point that Robert, I was informed from people that he said I tried to stab him with a knife, but I have proof from the text that he sent, the message he sent me, that says that I tried to stab myself in the chest, which is not true. But
Go back to that incident. So tell me what happened in the kitchen when you had the knife.
when I had the knife, I literally was standing there showing him I needed medical attention, which he was refusing to give me. The drawer for the knives just happened to be there. I took the knife out that I used to cut myself and placed it literally right here on the counter. I did not make any stabbing motions. It never got higher than this, ever. That is when Robert grabbed my hand and cut my thumb, and then he picked me up and threw me in the other room.
I don't understand. So he grabbed your hand and then put it on your other hand?
I will admit this was extremely fast, but I distinctly remember he grabbed this hand, and then that was the altercation where either he had the knife or it was in my hand. I did not cut myself. I can tell you that. I did not cut myself. I did not try to cut myself in that event in any way, shape, or form, and I did not try to hurt anybody. I simply was crying out that I needed to go to the doctor.
further, ma'am? Because,
Just 3 more points and I'm all done.
real quick.
Okay. On the 20th is when I filed a restraining order. I received an alert saying someone was attempting to log into my Google account for a second time. Rob texted my parents on a phone number that they never gave him in an attempt to communicate. In the police standby, I noticed that my purse items from my wallet had been removed and the purse had been reorganized. This is after the restraining order, and he placed a picture of him and myself in the bottom of the purse for me to find, since that's what I was going to get there. He's not supposed to be doing that. And then again, I saw Rob in the GRX driving by the pub where my sister and I were
I'm
having
going to
dinner.
object, Your Honor, to this because this isn't anything that's in the petition.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. What's your last point?
We can just end there. That's
All
fine.
right. Okay, so Attorney Parent, you have to decide how you want to use your time. It's 20 to 4.
Your Honor, the first thing I'd like to do is move to dismiss this matter. There's been no showing that my client is a threat to her in the future. She has moved out of his residence. He certainly has no intention of ever having any contact, and there has been no allegation of any incident that would cause, if a woman is standing there with a knife, he gets the knife away from her, puts her in the other room. That is the extent of it, and I would ask that the court to dismiss it without the necessity of cross-examination. Otherwise, I would ask you to ask her to take the stand for cross-examination.
All right. As to your motion, it's either deferred or denied. Ms. Archer, why don't you come up here? But again, it's 20 to 4, Attorney Parent.
Your Honor, I will do my very best. My client is entitled to a hearing, and I will do my very best to be quick.
You're still under oath.
Do you still work for Robert Parisi's business?
No longer because of the incident.
Okay. When was the last day you were there?
It would have been 9th. I think it would have been the 10th.
All right. Now, you had plans to be married, isn't that correct?
Yes, we did.
And once he mentioned the possibility of a premarital agreement, you were very much opposed to that, and that's when your relationship started to go.
That's not true.
So, is that
That's not
correct?
true. That is not true.
Okay. With respect to the knife, can you describe it?
It was purple.
How long was the blade?
I don't know, what's that, like 5 inches?
5 or
I'm
6
sorry, I
inches?
couldn't hear you.
5 inches about?
Did you make a motion with your hands as to how long it was?
I did.
Okay.
Approximately 5 inches, I would say.
Okay.
Right. And the sort of knife that could cause serious damage, is that correct?
Yes, it could.
And you're the one who took it out of the drawer,
I
is that
took it
correct?
out of the drawer.
And you told him you've been cutting yourself with that knife, isn't that correct?
That was the point of showing him.
Now, you said that you thought Robert was going to take away your daughter. With respect to that, did you didn't think that Robert was going to do it himself, did you?
When I say take away my daughter, I meant he was going to facilitate an action to get my daughter taken away like he previously had done when I broke up with him.
So, in other words, he was going to tell your daughter's father that you were having a mental health crisis. Is that what you were concerned with?
Or that I was on drugs. He'd done that before as well.
Have you ever been on drugs?
I've smoked marijuana.
Have you ever used any other drugs?
No.
Now, do you admit that on the 8th, you went up to Robert and you were pummeling him, hitting him?
On the 8th, I think that would have been Saturday morning, I believe, after I spent the night in the woods, and he started yelling at me again, I did hit his back with my fist. A meager attempt at being upset about it.
And that was without him hitting you. You just hit him, right?
I hit his back, yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything you want to say based on Attorney Parent's questions? Okay.
No.
Why don't you go ahead and have a seat?
Your Honor, I'm
Anything
keeping it as short as I possibly can. Wait till she's there, and then Robert can take the stand. your right hand. Do you swear the testimony, stand please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please be seated. Please state your name.
Robert Parisi Jr.,
And what is your current residence?
25 Adams Road, West Berlin, New Hampshire.
And how are you employed?
Self-employed,
And doing what?
general management and property management.
You own your own company, is that correct?
Yes.
What's it called?
RK Parisi Enterprises.
And what
Doing
business?
business as Posh House.
Say it again?
RK Parisi Enterprises.
Okay, thank you.
And it runs another business called Posh House, is that correct?
Yes.
P-O-S-H, house. And it's a home goods business?
Yep.
Now, with respect to this business, did you employ Ms. Archer at some point?
Yes.
And when was that?
Began in August of 2019.
Do you know what she did for a job before then?
General cleaning as an employee and as a privately held company.
Did you pay her more than she was earning at the cleaning job?
Yes.
Do you know what you paid her?
She ranged from $16 to $19 an hour with benefits, including health insurance starting in 2019 because I wanted her to get help. And I paid any co-pays always.
Were you aware that she had some mental health issues?
Yes.
Did you try to get her assistance at various times?
Yes.
And can you tell us about those times when you tried to get her assistance?
I called MFS, I called MAPS, I looked on Psychology
Excuse
Today
me,
with her.
you and I know what this is. MFS is Monadnock Family Services and Mental Health Center, is that correct?
Yes.
And MAPS is Monadnock Area Pastoral Services, which is a counseling center, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, what else did you do?
And then on the day of May 7th, I was concerned that she might not be safe around the children and myself, and I did want to.
Excuse me, hold it. Children, you have children.
Yes.
And tell us about how old your children are.
My children are 18, 14, 10, and 9. And her child was 9.
And do they live with you or with their mother or some combination?
Split, yeah, 50-50 arrangement.
And you were concerned that the children might not be safe with her around, so what did you do? Fletcher, the 14-year-old, is mine every night, so once I realized that Friday the 7th, what was going on, he had to stay with his 18-year-old brother at 349 Marlboro, which is his home address. But that was definitely, the little bit I gathered on the 7th, I tried to ask at the end of the 2-hour appointment. I said, I've been out here, I don't know what's going on, I would like to be part of the solution. And Christine put her hand up and said, that's just my ride. So I was trying to gather anything I could gather for her to have a good treatment, and I understood there was an out-treatment program. She had an appointment for the 13th, Thursday the 13th, and that she had medicine we needed to get at Rite Aid. And I definitely was trying to get a feeling from her if we had a safe home for the children, or if she needed to go to 110 Court Street because I still own that home, and she could have took residence there while we did the outpatient. Or I just wanted to offer her some options, and it was a simple sequester of her saying, well, you're berating me, I'm a horrible person, you're saying I'm a horrible person, and I was just mainly concerned for the children and for, her to not represent herself to any of them in a negative light. Now, do you remember what happened on the 8th with respect to her hitting you?
We had been, once she got out of the car at Rite Aid at 3:30 on Friday, we had been basically in a manhunt, and we were very concerned for her. Actually was up and down the streets, walking around the parks, walking on trails, walking everywhere. We were checking bars, we checked with friends. We knew that she was in crisis and didn't have anything but the clothes on her back and the shoes on her feet. So at 11:30, I went home, went to sleep till 3 a.m., and then came out and searched for her from 3 a.m. to noon. And I was just sitting at my desk waiting for the chance to see her, hoping she was safe.
Now, at some point, did she pummel you on the 8th?
Yeah, on the 8th, there was a brief interaction where she asked for her code and keys and effects, and I presented those to her and stepped back, because there had been a lot of periods in the relationship that she said, you know, when I get upset, I just need lots of space, even if it's walking 10 miles. Just give me as much space as I need. So, I mean, that was something we had seen before.
All right, now with respect to the incident with the knife, what day was that?
That was Wednesday the 12th.
All right. Now, can you please explain to the court your version of what happened how did you come to see her with the knife? Where were you? Where was she? And what happened?
So on the 12th, we were trying to see if she was feeling better. There was actually a note that I had sent to Eric Lazaro noting at 9 o'clock that she seemed to be getting a little better, and we might be picking up Emma. And my mood was up.
Who's Emma?
Emma is her daughter.
Okay.
And throughout the day, she was resting, but that had been what we saw for 5 days. She hadn't showered. She wasn't really making any attempts to do normal things. But you know, I knew we had the appointment Thursday, and it was hopeful that maybe when we picked Emma up, she would cheer up, or I would give her something to actually focus on besides ruminating thoughts or the pattern of the days.
So then what happened?
Basically, I was at the kitchen sink, you know, washing dishes up, and we were preparing to possibly pick Emma up, and I turned around to this display, and basically it was posed to me more as, you know, you're not going to control this. I need more help, and I'm going to make this happen myself. And at that point, she was holding a knife in a position that I felt like could be stabbing or dangerous.
Excuse me, which way was the knife pointing?
Towards her. And it wasn't a 5-inch knife. I have the knife. It was a 10-inch chef's knife with a blue handle.
All right, and she was pointing towards herself,
Yes.
like so?
Yes, and it was in her hands. It was not on the counter.
What were you afraid of that was going to happen at that point?
Well, at that point, you know, since I had been aware of, I saw a light slice on her wrist and thought that maybe it happened from blankets or some type of thing, or I really hadn't seen that ever before. And I just thought that the way that things were going, anything could happen. So I did quickly react to knock the knife away. And then I picked her up and carried her to a large recliner and set her in the recliner. Because the woman that I've spent 2 years with, taking care of and being with, I would not throw her on the ground.
Now, had she ever threatened suicide before?
In different intervals. She had also punched herself in the face or injured her body, or threatened my children, or threatened verbal things. I mean, there was erratic behaviors, and I always had to be responsible for everybody's safety, or I felt like it was, you know, like the day of the 7th when I was like, you know, how safe are you? You know, are you safe enough to be in the home? Was my main concern.
Now, when you took the knife away from her, did you get a cut?
Yes, actually right here, Officer Camacha noticed it, that I actually had like a pretty good 3-inch cut on my arm. And you know, honestly, that if that was the worst thing I had to deal with that day, I would be fine.
All right. Did he ask you if you wanted to bring charges as a result of that?
Yes.
And what did you say?
No.
And why not?
I mean, I was not, I was there for Christine the last 2 years, and, you know, a cut or a pummeling here and there is nothing that I wasn't used to or wouldn't do for her. So.
At any point, other than that incident with the knife, where you were afraid she was going to stab herself, did you assault her at any time?
Absolutely not.
Have you ever assaulted her?
No.
You ever threatened to assault her?
No.
And other than that single incident where you took the knife away from her and put her in a chair, was there any physical altercations of you against her as opposed to her against you, which you've already testified to?
I mean, I would never make a motion to hurt or harm her at all. So.
Do you have any intention of having any further relationship with her?
No. I think she's made it abundantly clear.
And at any point, she still has some things at your house, is that correct?
Yes.
Did she have the opportunity with the police to come and retrieve them?
They did. There was the responding officer was surprised that they did not take, they didn't take more or didn't take things, but.
Would you be happy to have her make arrangements through me to however it could be done to pick up whatever she still has at your house?
Absolutely.
Just a second, Your Honor, maybe you don't
Certainly.
know. Are you any threat to her in the future?
No.
I have nothing further.
All right. So, Ms. Archer, do you have questions? This is your opportunity to what we call cross-examine this witness if you so wish.
Yes.
You're not required to. Okay.
On the 7th, when I got out of the car, is it true that you found me the first time?
I found you at 6:30 and we talked for 20 minutes and I was afraid the pharmacy was closing. So I said, if you'll just walk to the building, I will meet you once I have your medicine. Because I actually went there 4 times to try to get it.
And during this conversation, did you remind me how selfish I was for wanting to go to the doctor and continuing
No.
that argument?
No, I said that I needed a better understanding if you were safe around me and the children or what I could do to make things better.
And alright, I guess that's everything.
Anything further based on those questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you may step down.
Thank you.
Any closing statement at all, Attorney Karen?
Your Honor, I think that there are two acts, two prongs to this. I don't need to lecture the court on the law, but first you have to find that there was a matter of abuse. Seeing a woman who was distraught with a knife pointed at herself, and he takes the knife away from her to protect her, and then puts her in a chair after he takes the knife away from her, is not an assault. I would submit to the court, number one. And number two, the second portion of that is that there has to be conduct which would be determined to constitute a credible present threat to the petitioner's safety. There's been no statement of that whatsoever. And I would submit that there is no evidence. I would make an offer of proof that my client has no criminal record. Nothing like this has ever happened in his life before. There is no basis for the court to believe that he has committed an offense or that he constitutes a credible present threat to her in the future.
Okay. Now, Ms. Archer, is there anything you'd like to say as a summary statement?
Yes, I would like to mention the fact that I've repeatedly asked for medical attention, and that's as him being well aware that I do have an anxiety and depressive disorder, that when I ask to go to the hospital, it means I need to go to the hospital so that I can be safe for the family. And those needs were not met. The continued threat that I feel is present is through all of the cyber stalking that Robert has done with me and involved 17 other people. It makes me feel like by having the fact that one of his friends drove by the homeless shelter that very day that I was there, made eye contact with me, I'm afraid.
Objection. I didn't hear anything about that in the hearing.
Sorry, I was running out of time, so I left it
That's
out.
okay.
I don't want to be abducted. I feel like I could be taken back to that house. Many of the things I know it's he said were not true. And everything I put forward is absolutely 100% true, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I will take this matter under advisement. In the interim, until a final order is issued, then the temporary order remains in place. It's already 4 o'clock. It will go out today. I thank you all for being so very prompt in terms of getting the hearing done before 4. And please stay healthy and safe.
Your Honor, practical matter, may we ask that she leave the courthouse and then we'll wait, and then when the bailiff gives us the offer, then we'll head out.
Yeah, thank you for suggesting that. So, Ms. Archer, if you don't mind leaving first, and that way there won't be any issue in terms of mail is down, so we can't send anything out right now. All right, thank you, so I'll show upstairs and try to.
Okay, all right. And I think there's a DVD from Hooksett on your desk
Oh,
that I'm trying to email.
oh,
Yeah.